Welcome to episode 142 of the Microsoft Cloud IT Pro podcast, recorded live September 6th, 2019. This is a show about Office 365 and Azure from the perspective of IT pros and end users, where we discuss a topic or recent news and how it relates to you. In this episode, we start on-prem and move to the cloud as we talk about the impending Windows Server 2008 end of life, migrating SharePoint off of the 2008 OS, and benefits of moving Windows Server 2008 servers into Microsoft Azure. Let's dive in. Recording.
Yeah. After like 142 of these things, I might figure it out someday.
It's always so much work to record. It's easy to talk. It's always hard to remember to record. Kind of like the meetings.
It used to be easier when I was on a Mac because the button was like right there and I had all my software and it just worked. And, this Windows thing is for the birds.
Well, you're saving your pennies, right? 4 more days. And hopefully, fingers crossed, knock on wood, we'll get an announcement of a 16-inch MacBook Pro with scissors keys instead of these atrocious butterflies.
Yeah, I think that's the October event.
Is that going to be October? You don't think they're going to tie it in with the iPhone?
Usually not. Usually the iPhone stands on its own, Apple marketing. But supposedly it's going to be like the iPhone 11 Pro Max. I don't know what their marketing team is doing.
iPhone 11 Pro Max, and then is there an iPhone 11 Pro Max X and an iPhone 11 Pro Max X?
Oh, no. There'll be an iPhone 11 Pro, an iPhone 11 Pro Max, an iPhone 11, which is what the old XR was. I don't know. Who knows what they're doing? Stuff.
Yeah. It's a good thing we don't have to talk about Mac news, and we can talk about Microsoft news where stuff actually always makes sense.
Right.
Oh, wait, no, never mind. Speaking of purchases, though, we were just chatting about this. I'm getting a new mouse. The small thing.
That sounds like a fun one. Logitech's new MX3?
MX Master 3. So I have had pretty much every Logitech MX Master mouse. I started with the original one. Now I actually have an original one. So what I do is I take the one I had and it goes into my backpack for when I travel. So I have the original now in my backpack and I have the 2S on my desk. So when this 3 comes, the 3 will probably go on my desk. The X will go into the backpack, the 2S will go in the backpack, and the original I don't know what I'll do with that one. But there's a couple reasons. So we were chatting about this a little bit and then decided we should record. There's a couple reasons I really like the mouse. So I can do a touchpad. If I'm traveling, if I'm sitting on my MacBook, I like the touchpad. I can do it when I'm on the couch or out and about, more or less. I still tend to pull out the mouse, but I cannot do the magic trackpad at my desk. It's the whole ergonomics of it, for whatever reason, sitting at the desk, that I try it, I can do it for a little bit, and I always end up back at the mouse. But one thing I like about the touchpad is you have the whole 2-finger swipe side to side, and by flicking and scrolling, you can scroll really quick on a touchpad, as opposed to a mouse that has the little clicky wheel that goes click, 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 and you go down 3 lines at a time. Well, the one thing I love about these Logitech mice, if you have never used them, is one, they have a thumb scroll wheel that is actually it's in a great spot for my hands. I get other people have different size hands. Sometimes a mouse doesn't work for somebody else. But when you start going into Azure and you get the blades that just keep going and going and going off to the right, or you get in like a Visio diagram and you want to scroll horizontally instead of vertically, this thumb scroll wheel just works really well. So I don't find myself frustrated when I'm in these other programs where you really want to scroll horizontally by doing, I think it's shift. I think you can do shift in the scroll wheel to scroll horizontally, and that's just a pain, but the scroll wheel on the thumb works great. And then the vertical scroll wheel is still a clicky one, but if you flick it hard enough or fast enough, like if you're in a 70, 80-page document, you want to jump down to the bottom, it actually automatically releases the little clicky control thing on it and turns it into like a freewheel spinning scroll wheel. And you can scroll down 70 pages like in a matter of seconds. You spin it and you just let it go. And it spins kind of like a flywheel until you either stop it or it slows down enough the clicking mechanism kicks back in, or you get to the bottom of the document. And the original and the 2, it was still like a mechanical one. The 3, they switched to a magnetic mechanism to control the clicking. So it's not like a physical piece that's causing the clicking, but a magnetic resistance. And people that have reviewed it said it actually feels really good. So I'm excited to try it. Should be here on Saturday.
Nice. Yeah, I was looking on Amazon. I couldn't see it there. It looks like it's just still on the Logitech site.
Amazon, I think, has it, but you're not going to get it until sometime in October is when all the retail stores and Amazon and all of them will have it. So I just ordered it straight off the Logitech site.
But in better news, you can get the old 2S a lot cheaper now. It's down to like $65 US.
Yes, you can. So if you want to try one out for cheaper, do that. But, here it was. This was interesting. So they claim, maybe we'll have to try this, on the 3, you can scroll 1,000 lines in 1 second by flicking the wheel.
Is that all? I mean, it feels like you should be able to scroll 4,000 lines.
It does. I have never counted how many lines I can scroll.
It's a good thing you got a big, beefy Word document in front of you
to give it a try on. Yeah, they did switch to USB-C too. So it's a USB-C charger. I don't know about the dongle. This is my one beef with them. Their wireless dongles still work better than Bluetooth. So I still tend to use the dongle, but being on a Mac, it's USB-A, and I always have to have an adapter or a little dock or something, or just put up with Bluetooth. But I find the preciseness on Bluetooth after using a dongle all the time, it's just not quite there yet.
Yeah, hopefully they've updated like all the firmware and stuff on those before they come out the door. I didn't know if you know this, but Logitech and their wireless dongles are kind of notorious for their lack of security.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about updating the wireless dongle on your mouse? Like the firmware?
I have, because I think it actually pops up with automatic updates.
That's if you've installed the Logitech software.
Yeah.
So if all you did was plug in the dongle and you use that because it's just like a plug and play device, then yeah, you might want to go out and see if you have a firmware update for your dongle. That is absolutely a thing too.
That would be interesting. I am going to have to go look at security on Logitech's unifying receiver dongles now.
I'll put some links in the show notes for you. Everybody can find those at what the heck is it? MS Cloud IT Pro Podcast /episode 142.
Perfect. Sounds good.
I did it.
So yes, that is my excitement. It should be here tomorrow, which means I'm going to have to find an excuse to work tomorrow so I can play with my mouse.
I can come up with something for you.
Oh, all right.
Upskillity is disrupting cloud training as we know it with their on-demand platform, Skill Me Up. Their new design focuses on a user flow to better support role-based learning paths with these great new features. Real-time, hands-on labs are now included with each subscription to build your skills competence. Hundreds of cloud courses with more added daily to transform your skills for today's cloud-first careers. Role-based learning paths guide you through associated level courses in an easy-to-view layout and tracker. Microsoft Azure and Microsoft 365 certification prep courses and labs to support you leading up to exam day. Learn more and start your free 3-day trial at www.skillmeup.com.
So that is non-cloud news, but news for me. I'll have to give you a full review. Other news, we made it through the hurricane. You didn't have to leave.
That was good. Kind of blew by. Looks like it hit the Carolinas a little bit, so no bueno for the Bahamas, and there's parts of Carolinas that are flooding now, which is not great either.
No, we definitely dodged a bullet with this one, but yeah, definitely some other areas that are going to be recovering for a while and got it a lot worse than we did. So we are back to business as usual here. It's sunny. We had one branch, a dead branch, come down out of a tree in the backyard, but it was like a little, I don't know, maybe half an inch around and 6 feet long, and it's still just laying there. The pool's a mess with leaves. All the leaves blew off the trees into the pool that I need to clean. But other than that, very minor compared to a lot of areas.
Yeah. So, hopefully your long national struggle with getting leaves out of the pool will be over soon.
Hopefully. It just takes some effort or some kids to get a little older and they can pretend they're diving for buried treasure.
Yes. Oh well. Well, let's get into today anyway. We're kind of talking beforehand, and usually it's a thing of pull up the news or talk about projects or things we've been working on, and we've kind of run through the news stuff, and we've been working on projects that are maybe a little bit older, but it could be fun to talk about what we've been doing anyway, because it might be front of mind for some folks, depending on the operating systems and workloads that they potentially run on premises today.
Today we were deciding, because ironically we're both working on similar versions of Microsoft operating systems due to this thing called end of life. So it is currently 2019.
It is.
There was a version of Server that came out 11-ish years ago now, and because of updates and how Microsoft end of life things, end of this year, Windows Server 2008 R2. I think 2008's already out of end of life, already hit it. But R2 is going to be end of life, which means if you were on Windows Server 2008, which I have found a surprising number of people are, and from my perspective, it's been mainly related to SharePoint 2013 farms on Server 2008, because 2012 and 2013 came out so close together. I don't think a lot of people put it on 2012 right away. It actually wasn't even supported right away. I think there was a service pack that had to come out for 2013 before it was supported on 2012. So, needless to say, 2008 is reaching end of life, and a lot of clients are like, well, we still have 2013. We haven't quite migrated to the cloud yet, and we need to get off Server 2008. So I've been working on a couple projects lately, upgrading a Windows Server 2008 farm to Windows Server 2012 R2 is usually what people are tending to go to right now with 2013, at least the ones I'm working with. So I can talk a little bit about that. And what are you working on with Windows Server 2008, Scott?
We are building some new stuff, some new hacks, open hacks specifically. And one of the new open hacks that's going to be coming out is the migration open hack, which is all centered around some of the things that you just talked about, particularly Windows Server 2008 and SQL Server 2008, R2 in this case, end of support or end of life, and kind of migrating those over to Azure for a couple of specific reasons. We can talk about those as we get into it.
All right. So which migration topic should we start with?
What do you think? Where do you want to go?
Where do we want to go? I can start with SharePoint. That's fine. Because I don't know. We're going to have to, we'll see how this goes. I don't know all the stuff I'm going to talk about yet, but we've practiced rambling, right? So no, the biggest thing that you run into with upgrading an OS on SharePoint is, to the best of my knowledge, and if somebody has any other insight around this, I'd be really interested in it. But myself, many others I have talked to, the only way to upgrade the OS under SharePoint 2013 is not to upgrade the OS. It is to create brand new servers. In this case, we've been doing Windows Server 2012 R2, patch them to the same level as the existing farm, join them to the farm, move over all of the services, and then unjoin or remove the old 2008 R2 SharePoint servers from the farm so that all you're left with are your new 2012 R2 servers. You end up running into a few gotchas with this, that some of them I expected, some of them I just didn't think about. Some environments have behaved better than others, so it's not always consistent. But if you do find yourself in this situation and you're not quite ready to go to SharePoint Online, this will at least give you some guidance on some approaches you can take, what you should pay attention to, how you should think about this. And if you are really fancy, you can maybe even take what I talk about and what Scott talks about and migrate to Windows Server 2012 R2 in Azure running SharePoint. It'll be interesting. So the first thing with this migration is getting all of the servers on the same patch version or the same build of SharePoint 2013. So the first thing, if anybody has ever patched SharePoint 2013, you know the headache that can come with it. You have all your cumulative updates that you can go download them, install them, run the configuration wizard, upgrade it. Great, that's all good. But if you have paid any attention, you would also notice that occasionally Windows or SharePoint Server Enterprise patches would show up in Windows Update, and you may have gotten some random Windows updates here and there from Windows Updates if you don't have that turned off. Obviously, the recommendation is to always have that turned off because you don't want SharePoint or .NET actually just patching itself automatically, because that has led to a whole bunch of other problems. But let's say, for argument's sake, you've left that on. If you go into your SharePoint 2013 environment and look at the build number, that build number may not be reflective of the cumulative update you've installed. So if you use that build number, it can get updated with those Windows patches. So if you take that, go compare that to cumulative updates, and then go install cumulative updates on your Windows Server 2012 environments, try to join them to the farm, it may actually tell you that your current environment is missing some updates that your on-prem farm has, because cumulative updates patched it beyond what your current environment is, because the build number was just due to one or two patches pulled out of Windows Update. So, best approach here, take the last known cumulative update that you physically installed. So you're like, I know my production environment has this cumulative update installed. I maybe don't know what Windows updates have pulled down. Patch your 2012 servers to that known cumulative update level. Go try to join them to your farm, and it'll tell you, hey, this server is missing this patch, which is always tied to a knowledge base number. And then you can actually use that window to click and download those patches in onesie-twosies instead of in the whole cumulative update. So I will patch to that known cumulative update, go try to join it, look at the first one, click it, download it, install it, try again, click it, download, install it, until everything is all matched up, and you can join them to the farm. So that has been my
It's like the old response.write method, or like, you're throwing JavaScript on a page and I need to debug this and I don't have a debugger, so let me just throw up alerts and see what happens.
Yeah, that's essentially it. I mean, the other thing you could do is go in and look at like all your programs and what's been installed and what hasn't, and try to get it from there. But the links in the configuration wizard are a lot easier to just go quickly download them and install them. And this gets really tricky too sometimes. Like if you realize that was happening and you turned off Windows updates partway through, and that has probably been one of the most time-consuming tasks. And as I download these and do this all on one server, so I'll go through and do the first server first, especially if you have multiple servers, download all of those to the same folder on the server. And then once you do the first one, you can just copy them all over and do all the other servers really quickly because you have all the downloads and the install files now. But figuring that out the first time is definitely not always the easiest or the quickest task to accomplish.
So you're kind of going down the long path, and certainly the right one. Can I ask why you did not follow Microsoft's official guidance, which can be found in KB 2818510, which has 7 simple steps? Step 1, make sure the intended operating system is supported by the version of SharePoint you're running. You already covered that.
See, I got that one.
Yep. Step 2, detach the content databases from the SharePoint server. So just go ahead and go for just ultimate downtime. Not a problem at all. Step 3, uninstall SharePoint through the control panel. Did you never consider this? Step 4, upgrade the operating system. Step 5, rerun the prereq installer. Step 6, reinstall SharePoint. Step 7, attach the content databases. Step 8, profit. That's Microsoft's official guidance, is just go ahead and uninstall SharePoint, detach everything, go, and then reinstall it later.
Why I did not follow that, I hope, is fairly self-explanatory.
It's one of those things, right? As we talk about things and, maybe we bring up documentation or the way Microsoft approaches life, there's other ways to live.
Is that on docs.microsoft.com yet?
No, it's an official KB.
Oh.
So, like I said, it is KB 2818510.
If it was docs, I was going to go update it in GitHub and issue a new pull request.
Everyone is always looking to save time in their day, just like moving to the cloud can save you from the mundane tasks of patching, updating, and maintaining servers. SaneBox can save you from the mundane and time-consuming task of managing your email. SaneBox works with your existing email configuration to make your mailbox awesome. It may be using Sane Black Hole to avoid mailing and cold sales emails, or Sane Reminders to automatically remind you when you need to follow up on an email. You can even snooze an email, just like that pesky alarm clock in the morning, to defer or to de-emphasize an email that doesn't need your immediate attention. So what are you waiting for? There's nothing to install, nothing to learn. Just go to sanebox.com/allthings. That's sanebox.com/allthings to get 2 weeks free and a $25 credit.
So honestly, if some companies could do that, I will give Microsoft that. Some companies, you could probably pull that off in a weekend or a night. Actually, one of the clients I'm doing this for is 24/7. They do nursing homes, and there is always someone working and always someone that has to access SharePoint. So we took the no downtime approach, albeit a little bit longer, but in theory, we have had some downtime as some services didn't move over quite as we anticipated, but then it's a matter of like 5 or 10 minutes of downtime when we go fix something or turn a service back on and go figure out what went wrong. But yes, by and large, the approach that we are taking is a no downtime approach to upgrading those SharePoint servers. It does require the extra servers though, because you need to mirror servers and you end up with double your amount of servers in the farm for a little bit there until you can decommission the old ones. But with VMs, especially now, that usually is not any problem to just spin up a few extra ones, and especially knowing that the old ones will spin down and you'll reclaim those resources.
Yeah, well, VMs brings up an interesting thing. So you're going down this path of saying, hey, let's get you into a slightly newer but still kind of old operating system to buy you more time for support, was kind of the way you had framed it, and we had talked about it originally, right? These things are going end of life, so if you still want security patches and you potentially want to be in that kind of position, you don't want to pay Microsoft a bunch of extra money for those things, and hey, this is what we do and how we get there. If you are in virtual machines, and I would say specifically virtual machines, whether you're running Hyper-V or Windows, you have some other options available to you, which potentially don't involve rebuilding operating systems or anything of that sort.
So I'm assuming this has something to do with migrating a Windows Server 2008 R2 server to Azure and some special benefits you get of running old OSs as an Azure VM. Am I correct?
Yes. So there's a couple of kind of kickers or incentives here, right? If you think about buying a car from Microsoft and going down to the lot, there's a salesperson out there saying, here's all the great things we're going to give you. So the first one is when it comes to those security updates, if you go ahead and get those workloads into Azure, you will get 3 years of extended security updates. No additional charge. And now you've just bought yourself potentially, whatever it is, probably 2 to 2.5 years of runway to start planning those upgrades and getting things kind of ready to go. You also get to take advantage of some of the other benefits of Azure in general when it comes to things like Windows Server licensing or even SQL Server licensing. So bring your existing licenses over, make use of AHUB, the Azure Hybrid Use benefit, and potentially even go into something like reserved instances and save yourself a bunch of money. This can feel a little bit, I think, like I kind of talk about them a little bit off the cuff as just like slam and cram migrations. They are 100% all about rehosting. There's nothing with refactor, there's nothing with rebuild, nothing like that. We just want to pick your workload up as it is and get it over to the other side. So it's not even like a lift and shift. shift because we're not really going to do a lot of modernization, or, there's not an opportunity to look at your SQL Server and say, hey, let's upgrade you to SQL Server 2012. It's basically like, let's lift it up, jam it to the other side. Well, once it's on the other side, let's start planning to make our lives better now that we've given ourselves that runway that you potentially need.
You're literally just changing your VM host. That's all you're doing, is switching it from one host to another host, an on-prem whatever to an Azure host.
Pretty much, with that one big benefit that all of a sudden you've just gained yourself those 3 years of support, which isn't, a thing that can be lightly discounted depending on how big your teams are or your budget or things. Like, not everybody has budget to reach out to a consultant like you. Some people run very lean, like infrastructure and application support teams, and you don't know what you don't know. So this is a method which can be pretty darn reliable, right? As long as your workloads that you're scheduled to run can be shifted to the other side like that, then you potentially have a path forward there.
Got it. So I was curious because I had seen this information too. It might have even been from you about this extended support if you're in Azure. How do they do that? Because obviously if it's on-prem or if it's in Azure, you're still security patches. It's a VM. Are they doing extra stuff in Azure that is securing it on the front end that gives them that ability to have kind of that extended support? Are they releasing patches that they're somehow only going to deploy to Azure VMs if there is a security vulnerability in Server 2008? How are they extending support from that security standpoint for a VM or a 2008 VM in Azure versus a 2008 VM on-prem? Do you even know what the magic is there?
It's the latter, is my understanding of it. So as your virtual machines in Azure reach out to Windows Update, those are coming from known IP ranges, and they will quite literally have access to additional sets of updates. So Microsoft does a couple of things for Azure virtual machines, just in general. You don't see it manifest a lot on Windows, but you do see it manifest in Linux. Like if you run, say, like RHEL workloads, you don't actually reach out to Red Hat's public Yum repositories for your updates. Microsoft maintains a Yum repository that by default all Azure Red Hat servers point to. So you can certainly point to Red Hat's, but by default Microsoft points to theirs. So they've already got these kind of vetted pools of updates that they know will go ahead and run on virtual machines. And if I had to guess, they're doing the same thing on Windows. It's just they're probably just letting in like known Azure IP ranges or things like that into kind of the public update hosts along the way.
Got it.
But yeah, you will receive those security updates at no additional cost. That's the plan there today.
Got it.
You'll reach out to Microsoft's like KMS servers and all that kind of stuff.
This obviously does a couple things. One, it gives people some incentive to move to Azure, which is where they would like to see everybody. And two, it's probably a lot easier for them to test and vet these updates because it's going on a known, it's not hardware, it's going on a known VM. It's not just getting pushed out where it could go on anybody's random hardware, anybody's random VM environment. It's a lot smaller footprint and a lot easier for them to test these security updates when they're only going to Azure and not just out to wherever the general public decided to install Windows Server 2008.
I think there's a couple things going on there. So when you're going into extended support, you're talking extended security updates. You're not talking base operating system patches, kind of like where we go from, release 1, release 2, and you have these major glacial shifts in what's going on in the underlying OS and kernel and things like that. So release frequency is less, and really it is about like getting warm fuzzies. So hopefully, that body of machines they have to test potentially goes down, although not every customer who has legacy Windows Server is going to go to Azure. Some are gladly going to continue to run on-prem, and they'll just pay Microsoft more money for the updates. Like, they're okay with that. That's a thing that happens as well.
Yes. So do you have guidance, or is there an article to point to? Because this also gets goofy because obviously you can't just go create Windows Server 2008 VMs in Azure too. If you're going to migrate, you have to go copy VHDs. There's a process you have to follow if you want to pick up these 2008 VMs, put them in Azure, And I even saw a tweet from you last night, I think, or yesterday, that you were doing a migration and testing some stuff out and everything blew up and you had to start over again. But it goes really smoothly all the time. No worries. It was just Scott doing stuff wrong. But yeah, some guidance. How do people go figure out more about this?
There's two things there to your question. So one is, I'll put a link in the show notes to the migration guide for Windows Server, which is specifically geared at these legacy Windows Server and SQL Server workloads. So it talks about ways to kind of run through Microsoft's migration lifecycle. So that's assess, migrate, optimize, manage, and secure. So how can you assess what you've got on-prem? Is it a good fit to go to Azure? And then when you're ready to migrate, how do you get it over there? And that'll point you to some tools like Azure Migrate for your assessments. It might point you to third-party tools, maybe Terminomics, something like that. And then same thing for the actual migrate phase to go ahead and get things in. So that might be like Azure Migrate combined with Azure Site Recovery, or again, a third-party tool could be like Zerto or something like that. That's going to go ahead and lift you to the other side and get you where you need to be. For that tweet I sent out, so that's around kind of building this new hack and doing some of that stuff. But the product that I'm using to do the migrations is ASR. So it's 100% non-destructive because my VMs on-prem are still running. And all I have to do is, like, if there is a problem in replication, well, I just stop replication and restart it. It's not like I've affected the workload in a bad way on-prem. It's running the whole time. All I'm trying to do is replicate the virtual machines across the wire to Azure. And yeah, it'll walk you through a bunch of that tooling and those things. I think generally the best way to get a server across, if you've got the network bandwidth for it, is an online transfer through hopefully something that can do replication like ASR or a third-party product. Or, the VHD thing can tend to be a little bit of a kind of last resort, just because you don't know if it's going to kind of boot on the other side and what that looks like. And there's a bunch of timing issues with, do I ship it across the wire? Do I put it on a disk? And what does that look like for me? Depending on how much you've got to move.
Yeah, I was going to say bandwidth is probably one of the big things you need to pay attention to if you're talking about replicating servers over the internet. Those are not always small replications.
I'm not too familiar with some of the third-party tools. So the way Microsoft does it for VMware and Hyper-V and physical servers as well with Azure Site Recovery is they have process servers. So the blocks or the bits from, say, like an on-prem VM are pushed over to the process server. The process server is what compresses them, and then it sends those bits up to Azure and kind of gets them into your recovery services vaults and storage and all that kind of stuff. So they've tried to kind of optimize that process along. But if you're collapsing, a data center and you have a couple hundred VMs or more, like you've got thousands, you're probably going to want some dedicated pipe to go ahead and make that happen with, express route and a peering path and all that good kind of stuff.
Got it. Very cool. Sounds good.
As IT professionals in the cloud era, sometimes it feels like we don't speak the same language as the rest of the organization. So when stakeholders from finance or other departments start asking about a specific project or team's Azure costs, they don't always realize how much work is involved in obtaining that information, sifting through cluttered CSVs and a complex mess of metadata in order to manually create custom views and reports. It's a real headache. On top of helping you understand and reduce your organization's overall Azure spend, ShareGate Overcast lets you group resources into meaningful cost hubs and map them to real-world business scenarios. This way, you can track costs in the way that makes most sense with your corporate structure, whether it's by product, business unit, team, or otherwise. It's a flexible, intuitive, and business-friendly way of tracking Azure infrastructure costs, and it's only available in ShareGate Overcast. Find out more on sharegate.com/ITPro.
Well, thanks, Scott. That was a good episode, all about an operating system that is now going on at least 10, 11 years old.
It's not timely just because, hey, Microsoft's released this support stuff along the way. I think you're going to see a lot of enterprise accounts and anybody who's in this world of Microsoft legacy Windows operating systems, you're going to see a very hard push, I think, from Microsoft to bring those things over to Azure. So there's that thought process that, yes, we firmly believe that you should have security updates and go ahead and run over here and your life can be better. And I think think a little bit of the back end of that is, hey, let's be honest, Azure's a business, right? And Microsoft is building that out. So by you moving a workload over to Azure and consuming over there, potentially that wets your whistle a little bit for getting into the cloud. Plus, you're starting to consume in more meaningful ways, especially with like a production workload.
Yes. And as a final disclaimer, we have not tried moving a SharePoint farm with ASR running on Windows Server 2008 R2 from on-prem to the cloud. I have no idea what that would do, but I kind of want to try it. Oh, have you?
Yeah. You can totally do it. You just have to. So one of the things is like when we think about like moving whole farms and everything like that, is making sure that it all gets shut down at the time, that you're kind of application consistent in how that comes across and potentially how it comes up and boots on the other side. But you can totally do it.
Got it.
This current lab I'm doing, we actually rehost the database servers as well. Just bring that across with ASR and make sure we turn everything on in the right order on the other side. Potentially, rename the servers, rejoin domains, things like that. And it just comes up and does what it needs to do.
Got it.
And one of the cool things about ASR is that isolated testing. So you can absolutely test all this stuff out, kind of run it through your factory, figure out what it really takes to get you there. So when you're ready to go to prod, you just don't have any hiccups because you've already done it 20 times and you know it inside and out.
Perfect. So it is similar to like when we used to do snapshots of EMs for SharePoint and all of that is when you do it, you really want to have all your servers shut down so you're not getting all your timings and everything being all goofy because of SharePoint stuff changing while you're doing it.
Yeah, you need to find a way to be application consistent. Like you don't want to just be, in the case of like SharePoint, Exchange, things like that, you don't want to just be crash consistent. So being in the right consistency model before you bring that stuff up to the other side and boot it is really important.
All right. Sounds good. Well, now I think we can wrap it up because I got nothing else.
I got a job. I got to go to work.
Well, okay, so I got nothing else we need to talk about today. I do have a job. I have a recording I need to go do and some more moving SharePoint around. So go enjoy your day, your weekend. Enjoy the sun. Now that the hurricane's passed, it sucked all the water out of the air. So it's supposed to be dry and sunny and very hot for the next few days.
Yeah, here we go. Back to 95.
Yes.
Love it.
Great times. Time to go clean out the pool so I can jump in. Or jump in and clean out the pool. All right. We'll talk to you later, Scott.
Thanks.
If you enjoyed the podcast, go leave us a 5-star rating in iTunes. It helps to get the word out so more IT pros can learn about Office 365 and Azure. If you have any questions you want us to address on the show or feedback about the show, feel free to reach out via our website, Twitter, or Facebook. Thanks again for listening and have a great day.